Morning, everyone. Good. Well, just a little bit about the DNO setup, distribution network operator setup. You'll see that unlike National Grid, the distribution network is actually split into 14 licenses across the UK. There's been a fair degree of consolidation over recent years, and you see it's now sort of down to 7 different owners. The challenge in networks is what I'm going to cover here is a little bit on the government's targets to sort of set the context of what just sort of picking up the points Jeremy was saying, and what Lewis was also sort of saying. What it means for generation, what it means for networks, both transmission and distribution, because whatever happens on the transmission system interacts with the distribution system anyway. The challenges there are for the distribution networks, particularly on active generation constraint, demand side management and distribution system balancing. And then just a little bit on what may be the future role of the DNOs in the future and how that's going to change. You'll all be familiar with these the 2020 figures and what that means. Jeremy talked about the sort of 15%, but actually what does that mean in terms of sort of renewables, sort of electricity generation? You know, so that's 38% target, which again is sort of incredibly challenging to use that word. We touched on there about the amount and scale of plant closures that's coming over that period, and just slightly different representation, but I won't spend too long on this as well. As sort of Lewis has already covered this. But you see the imminent closures on coal and existing nuclear, and the fact that by the time the new nuclear is coming on stream, the new gas, as well as the extensive renewable generation that's in the pipeline. Some of the opportunities in more detail. Clearly, the 5BarryHatton is one that's sort of hanging around time and time again, but will actually get off the rocks, but also that will be a sizable impact. But perhaps at the other end of the spectrum is what's happening with the domestic consumer. What opportunities does the consumer actually have to play in this? And increasingly, the opportunities to have own generator and wind generator, more applications of ground air source heat pumps, impacting not only the sort of consumption, but also the profile as well of the domestic consumer. So the proposal for feed-in tariffs will have a big impact in this area, really pushing the challenge for the distribution networks, which is actually moving from a passive network, i.e. where everything sort of flows in one direction from the transmission network through the distribution network to the customer, to moving to an active network. And of course, that, the distribution network was not designed with that in mind. And a lot of what's sort of talked about smart grids is really sort of about how you apply a lot of the technologies and operating practices that operate the transmission system effectively to system operation at distribution level. The challenges in this area, though, come from the targets around, the number of zero carbon homes that's proposed to build by 2020. Now, when these sort of figures were sort of originally proposed, the economy was somewhat more buoyant than it is currently. But those are still the plans, and that's what we need to feature into our planning. Lewis touched on the gas compressors and those opportunities there, but where they're going to connect, they're going to connect into the distribution network. This is, as Lewis mentioned, this is actually from the ESG sort of presentation and report, as I said, it's available on the web, which just sort of shows what's going on around the country, but also then what it means more locally. And with the scale of wind generation that's sort of coming off the east coast of England, we're seeing sort of what it means in terms of transmission reinforcements, but also you sort of see the changes in power flows and what does that mean. And to deal with that, the amount of reinforcement that's going on in the transmission system is playing straight into affecting the investment requirements of the distribution network through the increased short circuit levels that this is bringing about, and the change in flows. So, well, what sort of things does that mean then for the distribution network architecture? Well, unlike the transmission network, where the new national policy statements will aid, the facilitation of a lot of these reinforcement projects and the construction of new lines, we're limited with what we can do in the distribution network because we're not going to be able to sort of use those national policy statements because the scale of generation connection is considerably smaller. However, some of the projects that are coming and connecting onto our 132 kV network are quite sizable, up to about 300 megawatts at this point in time. The challenge then is how do you get all that power away through the existing infrastructure? How easy is it to rebuild new lines? So you're not getting consent for new lines is difficult, but how can you get more out of your existing? So it's looking at things like dynamic rating of lines to sort of say, well, actually, can we avoid having to replace existing assets? What sort of measurement technologies can we put in place to actually sort of truly understand what we can push through the system to make sure that certainly on our lines we're maintaining clearances and sort of not causing a sort of problem there. This is a particular example that we've applied through the 132 network in there to avoid, if you like, having to completely rebuild an overhead line. So we're picking up real-time information, not only in terms of the loading that's going through the line, which we can tell anyway, but what the local temperature is and applying that into what the clearance is of that line above the ground, such that we're not having to apply any constraints to the generator unless we really, really have to. Under the regulatory incentive regime, there's something called a registered power zone. It's mentioned at the bottom there, it's an RPZ. It was a proposal by Ofgem to try and encourage the deployment of new technologies in this area to facilitate DG. Unfortunately, it hasn't really sort of picked up. There's only a very sort of few examples of RPZs. And I think it's been one of those ones where the proposal came out in 2005, and bit by bit, year by year, there's one or two more adding onto the system at the time. Another area that's going to cause a problem for distribution networks is actually active voltage control. As I mentioned, the distribution networks were designed for one-way flow, so it was easy to sort of put the voltage control arrangements into profile what is a one-way flow. The multiple connection of lots of generators on the end of networks, because typically this is where they're sort of coming in, is causing havoc with the voltage profiles. So how can we actually improve the voltage profile for existing customers, as well as being able to get the power through the power into the system? And here's an example, again, sort of Martin in Norfolk, again, trying another piece of technology here in terms of being able to sort of get voltage signals from remote sites to the local primary substation to help improve the voltage control on there. And again, it's one of those projects we've been able to sort of register with Ofgem as a registered power zone. There are additional incentives for deploying it. One of the biggest challenges that we have, though, with the multiplicity of generators coming onto the system, is what it does for short-circuit level management. And one of the obstacles, quite often sort of quoted, is look, you want to put a new generator there, all it means we're going to have to do a massive reinforcement of the system, or a large-scale asset replacement, because the fault levels in the system on the proposed system will require existing equipment to replace. Well, one of the areas in technology that we'll be sort of we're looking at is, well, what other mechanisms are there to actually deal with the fault level problem? And there's a couple of trials that will be kicking off later this year to actually look at full current limiters to actually connect into the network to sort of provide some isolation between the generator and the network operator, such that you can get the benefit of the generation connection without having to replace extensive existing assets. As I said, we were effectively converting the distribution network from a passive network to an active network. That's going to cause some problems. One of the areas that we're having to sort of engage in is actually putting some constraints onto the system. I already mentioned in the example there on the 132 line of how we try and keep the generators going as much as possible, but there are cases where we have to be actively get in there and constrain that generation. And I'll come on to an example of that in a moment. Clearly, demand-side management has a big role to play in this. We can, as I say, avoid peaks, and avoiding peaks can help us defer replacement, asset replacement, or network reinforcement. But with that, you couple with the opportunities that are on storage. Because with the degree of intermittency that's coming with the wind regeneration, quite often we will have that power available when we probably don't want it, or we don't want to waste it. So how can we make use of that? Through demand side management, we can improve network utilisation and then actually improve the load shape. Okay, well here's an example of active generation constraints. And this is also a stroke sense, just to put it on. Put in an arrangement that enabled an existing CCGT power station sort of connected to a network to allow connect a sizable wind farm into that network without having to do significant replacement. So through changes in the protection system and communication system, we've been able to connect that such that what we're going to make provision for is if we lose a circuit, we would probably have to take the generator off. But through more active monitoring and having the ability to do some constraint work, we're actually able to keep that going longer than the level was big in conventional setup. When we look at demand side management, well, there are sort of multiple opportunities here. The load shape's going to change significantly. Because one of the other challenges that we sort of see there for 2020 is the decarbonisation of the transport as well. Well, how's the decarbonisation of transport going to happen? It's actually going to push up electricity demand. So electric cars will require more power. That's going to have impacts in the network and the way we design a network to enable that to happen, but it's also going to shift the profile. When will people want to be charging their cars? All the time when they don't work, and to peak demands. How can we sort of shift that shape? Can we have charging facilities in car parks? Can we have charging facilities in workplaces? Increasingly smart appliances, and the availability of smart meters with the sort of functionality that can play into smart appliances can actually help again modify those sort of load shapes. Anything that can be done on modifying those load shapes to try and sort of keep the peak demands reduced is going to avoid extensive network replacement. The challenge on this all comes around about comms, because this is incredibly data intensive. How do we deal with all the information that comes from, not only from the customer premises, but how it's aggregated, how it's processed. If you think you're going to have 20 million plus customers with smart meter and